Start the recording. Okay. Hello everyone. Thank you for those who have joined so far. And if you're watching this as a repeat on YouTube, thanks for watching. And welcome to this new EMC event, webinar style, but in terms of the content, slightly different to what maybe some of you have seen before or what we've done before. So this is what we're calling a clinic. And these are going to be a sort of series of events which are hopefully going to focus on aspects of research or energy modeling that can accompany the specifics of the actual modeling. So there have been quite a few webinars where you've seen people present their work and how they did their modeling, how they turned it into an article, etc. And we're lucky enough today to have Salisu Isihak with us to present to you some tips and tricks on how to actually write a paper. And then maybe one day it will be one of you guys, presenting in one of those webinars, showcasing your work. We're lucky to have Salisu with us as a member of our alumni. So he's been working in and around the tools for quite a while now, and he's a published author multiple times in these tools, as you're about to find out. So, pleasure to have you with us, Salisu, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, and great to find everyone here and for joining. And I promise you that we will try to make this interactive. If people can talk, they can raise their hand, we talk, or you can use the chat session where I will be monitoring. I mean, Alex, you can help me be monitoring it as well, so that we will tailor the next 1 hour towards the issues that we have. So once again, you're welcome for this webinar, and I would like to start by asking you a question, like how many, by show of hand, you can raise their hand, using the tool. How many of us have actually finished a research project, but it never get published? I mean, we never take it to paper, just to have a feeling of where we are. So you can raise your hand and we'll see how many people have raised up their hands. Am I able to see the people that raise hands?
I'm not
Okay,
sure if
yes,
you are, but I
I
can
see
see
it.
them also.
Yeah, I
Okay,
see
good, good.
multiple. Yeah, I see two people have raised their hands. So what that means is that actually, I will say that that is good, because actually I have seen a lot of brilliant work that have actually died on their laptop, because not because those works were not brilliant, but because the story was never told in a very proper way. And that is why this webinar is very important, to explore the tips and the tricks on how we will write a paper. And today, for many of us, publishing paper is no longer an optional. It's something that is really, really good. It helps us in determining funding, it's getting promotion. And for people like that are doing research or PhD, it's also a very good way of establishing your PhD and also creating, credibility in the fields that you are. But I have to tell you that no one can really, really prepare you to on how to write paper, that you won't be able to bypass the reviewers. The reviewers will always find something, which we are about to find out. So in the next 1 hour, what I hope to achieve is that we will have a little bit of rating on how paper is actually written, and we also have to also understand why papers are rejected, and what are the practical and frameworks that you need to employ to actually avoid, rejection of your paper. Not to avoid rejection of your paper, because they must be rejected, but to be able to publish it at the end of the day. So I am not here because I know it all, or I know how to write the best and excellent paper that will not be rejected. I'm here because I have been rejected several times on paper that I published. I have also revised and able to submit and eventually get those paper published. So I think that is why I'm here, and I really enjoy the energy modeling community. And I thank to the Climate Compatible Board for organizing things like this. So basically, my interest in life has always been in the sustainable energy development, particularly, energy access for all. I am particularly interested in ensuring that, everybody in the world, to the last mile, are able to get, a decent and modern electricity access. And I strongly feel this is necessary, because we all know the essence of energy and the correlation of energy to socioeconomic development. So I felt that in every aspect of, the SDG that we have, energy play a central role, and then providing this energy is very key. I have also, just like Alex have said, I have actually been involved with the energy modeling community, and I've also published some work using the tools that is there. I actually recommend that everybody should explore this tool to see that, because there is so many things. I'm sure that even the developers of the tool do not have the slightest idea of the kind of things those tools can do and the kind of questions they can ask. So it's left for us to keep exploring, look at how we can do things differently. Um, I have published almost like 3 papers using onset tool, particularly as recent as September last year. I have one of the papers that is published. I have a link here, which I think the presentation will be shared, that will take you to some of the publication I've done, and particularly the link to these 3 papers that I published. So today I will be sharing lots of the experience that I have in writing this paper and the issue that I have. I can start giving you a little bit of teaser. The last paper I published with this in September, I went to 4 rounds of reviews. I mean, we will talk about that, I think, towards the end of the publication. I mean, the presentation, where I will really share some of the challenges I've experienced and some of the way I actually went about addressing those challenges and surmounting them. So to start with, what is really publishing? And today we know that one of the best way to document and advance knowledge is through publishing, especially peer review publishing, where you're subjecting your work to the research community. It gets X-ray, it gets reviewed. You get asked you get to be asked a lot of questions. To be able to prove that you are adding to let me say, a new knowledge to the community, and you are advancing knowledge. So today, I don't think there is any better way of trying to show how we can advance knowledge than going through the publication process, and especially the peer review. And we also know that we can always publish original work. The original work will be in terms of the results, new result that we've seen, or it will be in terms of methods that we are trying to advance, or it could even be summary of works that has been done in the past, but trying to bring them together, which I call systematic literature review, to be able to show something like a pattern around them or a new insight around them and get it published. What we cannot publish is that we cannot just publish any report or something that is quite outdated or something that is not very conclusive, or something that is more or less like a duplication of a previous work without really adding so much to the knowledge. And we need to know that a good manuscript will always present to the research community, and you have the opportunity to get a lot of feedback from people around. So the next thing is that, just think about, why would you want to publish? You want to publish something that is very interesting. You want to publish something that is a hot topic, or something that have provide a practical solution to some policy problem, or to some practical problem. Something, like some of my research. I mean, the last research that I have done, the last paper I've done, which I was trying to look at onset and, linking onset with multi-characteristic analysis, actually published a work which is about, trying to find the least cost option for electrifying communities. When I started discussing with policy makers and then people implementing, especially when I was in the Rural Electrification Agency, the question I have is that we have limited budget, we have limited institutional capacity, we can't do everything at the same time. But how can we then take, the best community to electrify, rather than just going it, without particular strategy? And that's what kind of gave me an idea for the last paper that I published. I said, okay, in addition to that, why don't we advance the methodology and say that we have the list of the community, then we'll also be able to decide which community do we electrify first? So there are so many things that when you think about what to publish, there are so many things. I'm going to talk about also how to bring from idea to publication in a minute. But then when you answer all these questions, this is yes, then you know that, this is a publishable area. This is something that you can publish and you can actually go and do research around it. That is a common misconception I see people doing. We think that in a paper we have to report everything we do. No, it's actually just a focused document supported by evidence of what we have done. And it's think about it as a highly, summarized version of what you have done, but you are telling it in a story way, in such a way that people would be able to replicate that work. Then the next thing is that, okay, is that what really makes a good manuscript? So I'm talking about from good paper idea, where good paper come from? That is, where do you normally get the inspiration? Where do you get the idea to write those papers? Similar to what I told you previously, I did the research. Then I was having conversation of my research with people, and then an idea on the next research came up, and I went to pursue it. So there was actually a gap. So one of the best way to think about what to publish is that you will find there is a gap in existing literature, or it could be that it's a problem you observe in practice, or it could be that it's kind of an inconsistency in different findings of the same work. So you can actually go to do the research around it to be able to establish a better fact, which the first paper I published on onset was that there were work on onset that have in Nigeria that have different, data. I mean, let me say different results. The results were kind of different, and I was a little bit curious. Then I went into my work to be able to establish what is really the true position of the research. And at the end of the day, I was able to see that there were issues around lack of data. There were issues around, access to the information, but the methodology is the same thing. And I make sure that I compare my work with what they've done with my own to show where those gaps exist. And that is actually how those kind of work were accepted. So beyond that is how do you really turn the idea into a research question? So that is something I normally tell, or I normally do when I'm trying to do research. When I frame the idea, when I know exactly the kind of research that I do, if I cannot ask questions around my research, then I know it's not researchable. But I need to, because that will be able to help me make it a very specific and very answerable and relevant to the conversation I'm trying to create. So it's as simple as what will be the cost of electrifying, last mile household in Nigeria. That is a question, but I can reframe it in different way. But I have to frame it in my head to sound like a question so that I will be able to go and make it specific and be able to answer the question. And then what people don't know is that if you cannot explain it to yourself, then you cannot explain it to other people. That is why I always say that try to make your research question in one sentence. And if you know that you cannot do that, then I don't think you are ready yet to make a publication. Then the next thing I want to do, we want to look at is that how do you identify actually the right audience? So beside writing the paper, which I'm going to talk about the structure of writing the paper before we come to the publishing process, what kind of things that we go through in terms of, review, acceptance, we need to look at, once you do that, then you need to establish who are your audience. Is it an international community? Is it a local community? Is it both? Is it an academia? You need to establish who is it, because that questions will be able to help you to find the best journal. It will also to be able to help you know exactly where to go and publish your work. So you have to ask yourself the following question. Is this journal peer review? Of course, anywhere you will submit a paper, you have to ensure that the paper is, the journal is a peer review journal. And then you need to know who are the people behind the journal, who are actually the one reading the journal, and the kind of community that are reading that journal. Then you also need to find out that, how long does it take? Because this is quite important in publishing. There are papers I published, it took me 2 years to publish it. There are some I published it in 1 year. The fastest paper I published is actually about 1 year, 1 month. That is the fastest from the day of submission, from the day of first manuscript submission to the publication time. That is the fastest that I have done in my experience. And I've published over a dozen papers in peer-reviewed journals, which high impact factor. And the next thing is to look at then what is the journal impact factor? Of course, the higher the impact factor, the better in terms of readability, in terms of audience of the journal, credibility, and the rest. But maybe sometimes you don't need to focus a lot on this. And then at that point, then you decide on what the journal that you want to submit based on the relevance of the journal to the work that you are doing, the audience of the journal. You also look at the time factor that it takes you to do. So when all these things is done, then you know that, okay, I have now established where I want to publish. Then also we'll look at is that, okay, now what makes a good structure of a paper? And the way we look at this thing is that there is what we call the IMRAD logic. That is the introduction, methodology, results, and discussion. So when you follow almost all paper, follow this logic. When you follow this logic, you will now be able to tell a story around the topic you are trying to do, and also be able to carry your audience along, those that are actually interested in what you have what you have research on. So to look at it, in most journal, you actually have this structure, like you will have the title, the author, the abstract, the keyword. Then further, you follow the IMRAD logic. And the IMRAD logic is the introduction, which I'm going to talk about it, the method, the result, and the discussion or conclusion. Then you have the acknowledgement where necessary, or you then provide your references and then supplementary material. Supplementary material is very, very important in the community, especially in research community, because you are able to provide additional information that you might not be able to put it in text on the main paper, because if you do that, it will reduce the readability or the logic or the flow of your paper. Then you can pack those things and put it, and sometimes it's data. I normally put a lot of data. All of the work that I do, I try to make sure that I make the data available because I'm trying to support the research community. So just think about the IMRAD as, the introduction is, why should I care? Because in your work, you need to really convince somebody that is reviewing. Why should I care? That your introduction should tell that story. And then your method should tell, why should I trust you? Then I should trust you if you tell me how your work is carried out and how it can be replicated. Then the next thing is about result. And from the reviewer's perspective, it will be, what did you find? Okay, you've done the result. So the result should tell people what you find. And then in the discussion, which I normally tell people, is it should tell the reviewers, why does it matter beyond the data? That is the data set. Why does it matter? Now you are discussing why your result matter, why the research matters a lot. So this is the framework at which I look at, my paper writing when I'm writing it, and I make sure that I enter the head of the reviewer and answer the introduction with, why do I care? Why should I trust you? What did you find? That is in the result. And then why does it matter? Why the work matters? Because this is how I try to do it. So we'll take it one by one. The introduction actually is the storytelling. And many manuscripts that I've seen, because I'm also a reviewer to so many journals, one of the main things that make me to reject a manuscript is that the introduction is very poor and it's not highly motivated. From the introduction, you should be able to carry me along. That's the first question that I'm taking. I should be able to know that, oh, this paper make a significant research contribution, or it advancing knowledge. So it's an opportunity for you to really showcase the objective and the background of the work. And in many instances, the introduction is something that you should write the last in your paper, writing, because it is only when you finish the story you'll be able to tell the story. So at the time you are writing your paper, you can have a scanty introduction, but to really tie down the introduction is when you finish your work. That is when you will be able to connect all the dots in terms of that. Then the next thing actually that you see is the literature review. So a lot of people get it wrong here in literature review, and I used to have that same problem. And I thought literature review is just somewhere that you are reporting other people's work, but that's not the case. In the literature review, what you are doing, you are trying to bring the research home. You are trying to research and provide a gap in your work so that you will justify why your work is also important. So it's to show your understanding of the field, it's to identify the gaps or the blind spots that are in that area, and also be able to organize it in such a way that it will be understood. So it is not just summarizing paper by paper. No, that is not literature review. You have to make it well organized. You have to be able to organize it in such a way that it tells a story. And I can show you example, for example. Uh, in most literature review that I do is that sometimes I try to organize all the literature in different strands. Maybe I can group my methodology based on, I mean, my literature review papers based on methodology, or this paper explored this is methodology on this subject area, or I can do it based on data, or this one they look at time series data, this they look at primary data, or I can, look at it in a comparative analysis. I will say, what have this one done? So you need to create a knowledge with the literature review. And here is a summary of, some of the things that I've done in my literature review. That this is like, when I did a literature review, I was trying to do an onset analysis. And then during my literature review, I was able to trace the history of how GIS model and rural electrification evolve over time, and that is why I was able to bring it home, summarize it, and then depict it in a diagram that would be very understood easily. But the story of how it came from, how they developed over time, was in my literature review. And I was reviewing all the papers that actually do that. So I follow it that logic. Sometimes I do it based on country. We say that, okay, there is this field. I mean, so papers have looked at this country, and this is what they said. This is how what is different in their result, or what is similar in their result. Or I could do regions. So I really think that a lot of papers get rejected because of that. Then the next thing we look at is the methodology. Here is where you earn your trust. So you have to be very clear, it's not being defensive, and you have to explain why you're choosing the method out of so many methods that you have in doing that research. So I have never seen papers, even papers that I review, that were rejected based on simplicity, and perhaps papers that are rejected based on, being very unclear. Here again is one of the papers I published. I just give you a sample of, after I have described my methodology, which was the data and what have you, I then tried to do a simple flow chart on how this, model really thinks, how the methodology starts. And I will tell you from the start of the model to the end of the model, this is exactly what it does. But there is more elaborate explanation on how this is done. So always try to simplify things in the methodology so that allow people to be able to replicate the work that you've done, the reviewers to be able to see the steps you follow in carrying out your work. Then the next thing we look at is actually the result. And here, when it comes to result, I normally tell people, allow the data to speak. So you are presenting your finding in a very logical way, not necessarily chronological, because people get buried with this kind of issues and people get rejected. Try to tell a story with the data, not try to do it in a serial way. And to avoid interpretation here, you are just, trying to tell what you've seen in the data and play around. So the way I actually do, when I do my analysis, I have my result. I really sit down with the data. I look at the data thoroughly. I look at what kind of shape and form I can use. To present the data. Is it in a chart? Is it in a table? How can the table be organized to really be able to explain the data or the result that I have gotten? And I think people try to rush to just present this, but in anyway, it's a place that you need to speak with the data. You need to spend a little time with the data, with the results, to look at how best to present it. Then where you need to do a lot of work is actually the discussion part. And this is where you end the paper. That is, you end the confidence of the reviewers and the research community. And here you are talking about what does the result mean actually? What is the impact of the result? And here you talk about the implication. It could be a policy implication. You do some comparative analysis of what other research have done, why it is different from your own. You also bring it home to look at how this one either align with theory or policy, or it is divergent with the current theory knowledge that we have, and so many things. And also, just like many other parts, many manuscripts get rejected because there is no proper conversation. There is no proper discussion on the implication of the result, or what did you see? What did you find? The so what of the data, the result that you have, which is the discussion. The so what, if it is not very tight, there is no, you cannot really find a new knowledge or a new implications, then your paper gets rejected. I'll give you an example here with some of the papers that I have done. One of the paper that I've done, I did a paper. First of all, I just did like a review, look at how Nigeria can electrify everybody with proper electricity using, renewable energy and what have you. I submitted it to a journal. I got a rejection. The first within, I think 4 weeks, I got a rejection. And the conversation was that, okay, I have not really have a proper discussion of my result and what have you. I took that in. I went down, sat down, and try to review all the works that have actually been published in Nigeria around that field, and also around other countries that have similarities in terms of structure, economy, problems with Nigeria. And I bring it home. At the end of the day, when I submitted it to another journal, one of the reviewers, I think two of the reviewers actually pointed to the fact that there is a great new knowledge in my discussion based on the comparative analysis that I've done with other, papers in that field and how their data is different from my own, that they find it worthy of publication. So this speaks to the fact that sometimes we should not be afraid of rejection. We take rejection and then we try to improve it based on the feedback we have. I am sure we will talk about it a little bit later. So the next thing is actually in that IMRAD structure is the conclusion. So in this conclusion is where you actually tell, in a very concise way, the reviewers, what exactly you have done in the entire work. So here, you tell how your work advances the field from the present state of knowledge. So you're trying to tell, okay, there is novelty here. Even though, remember, you also clearly define your novelty in your introduction, and sometimes in your discussion, you will try to, define how the paper creates some kind of new knowledge. The novelty in the work should come somewhere around that. And without proper introduction, that is without proper conclusion, sometimes the paper seems to be very weak. Then reviewers will find it very difficult to kind of accept it. And I want to also emphasize that here, when we talk about conclusion, we should try to avoid repeating the abstract, because abstract should be a little bit or completely different from your introduction. So here they are somehow similar, but they are completely different. And we should try to make sure that in our conclusion, we are not repeating, or in our abstract, we are not repeating our conclusion, because of course, abstract will come at the end after you've written the conclusion. So before we go to the next section of the paper, the webinar, let me see if there are questions on our chat. Okay, I think Alexandra, you've been okay. I can see that there has not been much conversation. Okay, that is fine. I'm here. You can always put your question there, and then I'll make a reference to it, so that we'll be able to make it very interactive and also very productive. So this is where actually the main work starts. So let's assume you have your manuscript from idea to paper. You are able to follow the IMRAD structure. You have your paper. You have everything. And the next thing is actually the submission and the review process. So in the submission and the review process, like we all talk about, you must have chosen your journal, which we said is one of the things that you do, the audience, and you must ensure that the journal you're submitting the paper fits in to the work that you are doing, because if it does not align with the journal objective and the field, it will be rejected automatically. And then the paper is also kind of, let me say, very relevant to the entire community within that journal, because the journal can have different objectives, but try and make sure that the journal you are selecting almost align very well to the work that you are doing. The next thing is actually to do when you are submitting is to make sure that your cover letter speaks exactly to the contribution your paper is giving to the editor. This is one of the first chance you have with interaction with the editor. So that is when they are reading your cover letter, before they even go to the main paper, you should clearly be able to, buy them in, kind of be able to convince them that your paper is worth publishing. Then Another thing is that one of the things that we cannot, let me say, avoid in any paper, there is nobody in this world that can prepare you from paper rejection, is actually handling rejections. And I want to tell you a story, and that is why I put this. This is by the right hand side is one of the papers that we publish with my colleagues. And the story of this paper is that we did this paper around 2015. We didn't get it published till around 2018. The first submission we had was around 2015. And another thing is that this paper got rejected more than 10 times from journals. So we send it to a journal, the journal will reject it, outright rejection with some feedback, we will improve it, we send it to another journal at the end of the day, and we get some feedback. Some there was not even feedback, they will just tell you that, oh, we didn't find it worthy of publication and the rest. But at the end of the day, when we finally get it rejected in Springers, in one of the journals called Financial Innovation, this paper turns out to be one of my most cited work. It has almost 400 cited. It has been cited by more than 400 people. You are seeing 141 here because they are only taking reference to some citation. There are some that Google Scholar will pick, and this journal will not pick. And this paper has been assessed by more than 45,000 people. So just to tell you that just because your paper is rejected doesn't mean it's a bad paper. It's an opportunity for you to use the free consultancy provided by the reviewers, improve the paper, and finally get it submitted. So I have a paper that has been consistently, rejected for 2 years, but the tenacity that we have and the consistency, we know very well that that is novelty in this work. And we felt that we are just the reviewers were not just able to see that novelty, but we are using their comment, improving on the paper until it got published, and it's ended up to be one of the first papers that we have published. And let me go deep down into the review process, especially the editorial process. I'm sure you see that. I like this picture. The way most people see their paper, or let me say their journal article when they are about to submit it for journal. They think that the reviewers are somewhere on the road waiting to smash them as they send the paper and what have you. What we don't know is that these reviewers are gatekeepers. They are just trying to ensure that the knowledge you are bringing to the community is something that can be proven, is something that is credible, is something that can be replicated. So the issue that we need to also understand that paper submission is not a black box. There is actually an articulated process of how the entire review process or the submission takes place. It starts with the author. The author actually sends the paper to a journal after you've done everything that we said you've done. You look at all the reasons, all the IMRAD structure, you look at your motivation, you look at your introduction, you selected your journal, you finally submit your journal. It actually goes to the editor. And there are basic requirements the editor will do. Sometimes the editors now, they can easily reject. I'll tell you why they reject the work. They can easily reject outright, or they can send it to the reviewers to collect opinions on the reviewers, and the reviewers will review the paper, give an opinion. And this opinion could be, thank you very much, Jerry. I've seen your comment. These reviewers will be able to get some kind of comment on the paper that is in these days more like a structured way on how they can put the comment, and they can also score the paper at the end of the day. Then they can give you free advice on the area that you can improve the paper and the rest. And then they send back the reviews to the editor. The editor will use that to review it. He will either reject the paper or accept it, or if it rejects, then it goes into publication process, and which is like a couple of weeks. There is some pre-printing issues that you need to do, some copyright and the rest. Then if that could be, so let me say recommendation is that you review it and then resubmit. Then you can see that they will ask you to do a revision. And revision is actually a very, very good way of improving your work. Like I told you, that the last paper I published, I went to 4 rounds of review, very, very rigorous review. I will show you somehow the way I even respond to those reviews. So this is the way submission happens. So it's not a black box. It's actually a very well articulated process, and there is no ambiguity in the process. Now, in the initial editorial review, many journals actually use the initial editorial review where I told you that the editor can easily reject the paper if it thinks that, or the editor thinks that that paper is either not relevant to the field of the journal, or already the paper is very weak in terms of argument, that in terms of the scope, or the paper is using a routine and well-known method, there is no any addition to knowledge, or there is a poor English. There are so many reasons, the editor will outrightly reject the paper. And the reason is this, right? Because the review system is grossly overloaded, the editors actually are very, let me say, conscious of the time it takes to give it out to reviewers and for reviewers to send their comment. And it's kind of more or less like a disservice. That's how I see it. So if I know this is not worthy of publication, why should I even bother taking the precious time of our reviewers, which is in many instances free, that the reviewers don't get paid to review, is their contribution to science. So why should I take their time to really send it to them, and then at the end of the day we know we are rejecting it? So that is a first call that the reviewers will do. But like I said, redundancy rejection, if I had known this much earlier when I started my research career, I think I could have had a lot of paper published. Let me say, more than 10 years ago, more than a decade ago, I have produced a lot of manuscript, and immediately I get the first rejection. I think the first few manuscripts I have submitted publication, when I get rejected, the first time I get rejected, I kind of become demoralized. I could not do it. I just let it go and what have you. And by the time I understand that, tips and tricks of writing the paper, using that as a free consultancy, the paper is already outdated. The data is outdated. The argument has already been overtaken by event and so many other things. So I wasn't able to really go back to that because I didn't get those tips at my early career. So I think this is very important, which what the energy modeling community is doing, trying to create this awareness and trying to educate people on, how to really improve the paper writing. So the next thing is actually to look at the reviewing procedure. So in terms of the reviewing procedure, that is what we should consider here is that with several, peer review discussion and what have you, nearly every manuscript that I know require revision. There is never a single manuscript, like I said, I've published more than a dozen papers that has never, required revision. So see revision is part of the game, and see revision as an opportunity to improve your work. And you are also able to learn from that, because in many instances I realize that when I'm trying to answer the reviewer's comment, like improving the paper on the reviewer's comment and what have you, actually I always see knowledge, because I am able to see things from the lenses of the reviewers. And sometimes a lot of times they direct you to a new knowledge that you don't know exists. I have reviewers that even sent me, link of papers that, will be very useful to my work. And when I read this paper, even though I have different tricks of searching for paper, in Science Direct and other, peer review journal, those papers didn't come up. But those particular researchers already know those papers exist. They give it to me, I reviewed, and I improved my work. So I don't want, like the previous experience I have in my early years when I started research, so anybody to get demoralized with the rejection or reviewers and what have you. And actually, sometimes I need to also tell you, I can give you example with the last paper still that I published. The cognitive strength that I had when I was writing the paper was much less than the ones I had when I was reviewing the paper, when I was, going through the review process. What I mean is that if you combine all the efforts that I am putting from the paper writing to the review, from the paper writing to the time I submit it, then from the time I receive the review to the time I publish it, the one the effort I have put from the time I received the review to the time I published it was more insightful, was the biggest for me because I've spent nights, just trying to review that paper, adding it together, and so many other things. Yeah. So the also things that I've realized with that process is that it is even the period I have a much better understanding of even the contribution that I'm making in my work. And that is also the opportunity I was able to understand the area even deeper because I kind of get directed to go and do a lot of things to improve the work. And in the process of improving it, I am becoming a better science researcher. I'm also becoming a better researcher. I'm also be able to know the field even much better. So that is since I created this framework in my mind. Anytime I see, review rejection, I smile over it. I just say another opportunity to learn. And that is how, in the last couple of years, maybe in the last 6 years, 5 years, I always see rejection and review. So sometimes the review could come with a, minor revision. This time is like, it could be grammar. It could be that they want you to change the tables, the way you organize the table. It could be that they want you, there are some lack of clarity, but they all acknowledge that the paper is worth publishing. So you do minor review. Sometimes it could be that you will do a major review, which warrant you actually changing a lot of things and, even sometimes changing a new perspective or a new focus on the paper. And I can give you an example on this. We published a work on using the input-output method in one of the European journals. That was around 2010, I think 2010 also. When we submitted that manuscript, we submitted the manuscript as just a result that, a new insight we see from the result. The paper got rejected. And somehow within that, it got reviewed, but the reviewers comment is that the paper should be rejected, and we got that decision, and with the reviewers comment, and within the line, with a nice print line of one of the reviewers was like, this paper is more advancing methodology than providing insight for the result. And we actually picked that. And that is even when we realized that in our method, we actually advanced the method because we kind of incorporated another method within input-output model. So we incorporated it because we are answering another question within that model. We now realize that, the result we've gotten from the input-output is not answering our result, which is around emission, carbon emission. We then incorporated another method. So we now change the perspective of that paper, not necessarily changing a lot of the content of material, but our introduction have changed. The emphasis on the paper now is that we are advancing methodology and we are bringing a new way of answering questions. And we frame that paper in that line, then we submitted it to another journal. Even better, in terms of impact factor, with the previous journal that got it rejected, and actually we got a minor revision, and then we end up publishing that work in that particular journal. So what I'm saying to say is that at every point in time, when you receive those kind of things, just sit down, with open mind, open heart, read it through and see how exactly, you will improve your paper. So this is, things that can happen is either you go for a major review or you go for a minor review, whichever one is actually a good one. Then the next thing is that, what next after revision of your submission now? What is it? And here I would say you should carefully study the comment. Like I said, I've prepared a detailed letter of response. And I will show you a sample of the letter. So what I try to do here is that you must approach the reviewer's comment with high professionalism, even where you disagree with them, because the reviewers don't know it all. You might know some things better than the reviewers, and the reviewers know something better than you. Even where they got something wrong, you should actually provide a comment to their a response to their comment in a very polite and highly professional way, without mocking them, without showing them they don't know what they're doing or whatever. Acknowledging that, and then trying to also educate them because it's a two-way learning. Sometimes I have made a comment in a paper I review, and when I got the response, I realized that it is me that have not understood what the writers or what the publishers were trying to do, and I have a better understanding. So do it in a very professional and very nice way, and with the intent of providing much clarity if it is something you disagree, or implementing exactly what they ask you to do if it is something that has to be done. Then the next thing is that it is not unusual to go to different round of review. Like I said, even in the last paper I published, I went to 4 different reviews, and this second, fourth, whatever section that I review you will see is part of making the work be very, very scientific. It's part of refining the work to be able to bring the best knowledge out of it and to be able to help and advance knowledge in the research community. And for me, I see old reviews, not just first or second reviews, as an avenue to discuss my work with, renowned researcher in my community, because these reviews goes to people that are very knowledgeable, that are renowned in the field, and they kind of know it all and put them on call. So I see it as a way of engaging with them, then exchanging and, doing a lot of things. And what I normally do when I am responding to those comments, which I will show you in a bit, is that I cut every response they have said. I create a table, I organize it in a nice way that will speak, so not really in prose, like I'm not writing a letter, even though I'll make it look like a letter, but I will take every single comment they have made. Sometimes they don't number their comment. I help divide them into different components of the comment, and then specifically I explain to them what I have done to respond to those comments. I also do track changes to show them and also refer to them to exactly what I have done in the paper to address what they have said. Where what they have said is not something I can do or is out of the scope of my work, I politely tell them that, yes, this is a nice to have, but this is out of the scope of this paper because of this reason, this reason, this reason. The focus of this paper is this, and if I do this, I am diluting the focus or I'm diluting the relevance of the paper. So I do it in a very nice way to explain it to them. So like I said, always, a lot of people get it wrong. Please do it in a very polite way. Don't make it kind of, you think that they are like the picture I have shared. They are just trying to knock you out, or no, they are actually trying to help you. Do it in a very convincing and very solid, language. If you are providing any rebuttal, do it in a very, very polite way. And so going down, this is like a sample of some of the comments that I have made, and this is the way I structure it. You can see that I can show you, for example, reviewer 3. Let me just jump to reviewer 3. Reviewer 3 give me 3 comments. The objective of the study are not well listed, and it will be difficult for the reader to identify them. And truly, that was what it is. Initially, when I was writing the objective, I just made it in a prose. And the reviewer, in his own wisdom, feel that articulating it and making it, optimizing it is even better. And it will provide a better way of understanding the paper, which I did. And I said that I've done that. So even the next review conversation you say is that even though study present the background, the literature review and the state of the act are vague. I went on to provide, to make sure that I make them a little bit solid. I change a lot of things. I improve it, and I mentioned that I have improved it. So this is in a very what we call it quick way. Some of the way that the tricks that we need to follow in publishing paper. First of all, is understanding that you have to motivate the paper. The topic is relevant, and there's new knowledge there. You are actually adding to the conversation. We also know where to get the ideas on where to write those paper from. Like the last paper I published is from conversation with somebody on my previous work, and I realized that I can actually improve this work. And what is also important actually now, I'm also improving the same work, but also incorporating other things. So that is how the knowledge keep going on, and we keep publishing it. So I will try to go to the comment if there are questions. Then I kind of attend to it. If there is no, then I will also share some of the experiences that I have um, in publishing, especially when it comes to the structure of the paper. Alex, do we have any questions that I haven't seen?
Yeah, so I think there are I'm not sure if you probably maybe already answered them, but there are a few in the chat. One from Jovine asking, can you recommend any publishing platforms where people in the loop can benefit, maybe with less costs or even free costs?
Okay.
Another one was uh, early manuscript rejection could also be due to plagiarism and high similarity index. Could you please share the difference between the two?
The last question, I didn't get it. So there is a free publication, yes?
Yeah, it says another reason that warrants early manuscript rejection is plagiarism and high similarity index. Could you please share the difference between the
Okay,
two?
okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I
And then
get it.
there is another question in the Q&A, but I'll let you answer those two first.
Okay, that is fine. So, a quick one regarding the free publication. Yeah, yeah, this is actually a very hot topic that we always have. Publication actually for researchers is quite expensive. Sometimes you can see going to up to $2,500 and the rest, and it's quite expensive. I acknowledge that. But the beauty is that there are many platforms that can help you publish, or that can help you take care of, the cost of publication. And there are some that are actually, depending on where you are in the world, that even give you a huge discount, on the publication. I can tell you for free, for example, platform like the, climate compatible growth, they have sometimes call for papers, and in that they will tell you if the paper is using so model, you are ready to provide the data of the work. They are happy to pay for the cost of publication for you. And I have to have maybe a disclaimer here. I have used that opportunity to make my paper published. Two of the papers I published there actually were sponsored by um, climate compatible growth. So, and then another paper that I published that require, cost of publication, I didn't realize that there is an organization that is promoting that work that I'm doing, which was around, getting data for primary data for communities that got electrified. And what I did was that I sent them an email to say that this is the research I'm doing. I have finished the research, ready to share, send the manuscript out. I'm happy to acknowledge that you pay for this, publication, and I'm happy to show you the data. If you will sponsor this, publication, if it is accepted, you pay for the publication fee, and they accepted. And truly, in the last couple of papers that I published, I really don't pay for publication fee. I find organization, I reach out to them, and I tell them who I am, I tell them what I have done, and I tell them that I need their support for the publication fee, and they always do that. When I was student, when I was doing my PhD, my university was paying for me as well. And then there are also some journals that are, when you search for all these kind of journals that actually allow for free publication. They are also peer review with high impact factor. They provide for free review. There are journals that are doing, free, maybe kind of a period where they will say that if you are able to submit paper within this period, we are waiving the cost of publication. So it's all about trying to find the right journal, trying to find a journal that you may not pay, or trying to find the person that can help. And if you are doing, I agree that, I think that many of us are in this community, you can reach to Alex. Maybe you should write to Alex if your paper falls within, the tools that community is using, and they might consider, supporting, maybe not 100%, but substantially to see that. And the last trick I've done is also to tell you that there are papers I publish, and then I now collaborated, which I don't know if there is any question that comes in about co-authors. It's something that we can take 10 minutes to explain the advantages of co-authors and why I really find it very valuable. And one of the way I find it very valuable is this. There was a paper we published. One of the co-authors was at the university. He wasn't the first. I was the first author. He wasn't the first author. But because he is part of the editorial, I mean, he is part of the authors on the paper, we use his organization actually to pay for the publication fee. So there are different tricks that you can do to go around that. Then the other paper, the other issue around rejection that has to do with plagiarism, this has to do with what we call publication ethics. And because 1 hour is not enough for us to talk about the ethics of publication, and that is why I didn't bring it on. But there are a lot of issues around copyright, plagiarism, paraphrasing, kind of recycling. Even researchers do recycling and the rest, possibly. So it's a big issue when it comes to that. Actually, in the slide I prepared, I actually have like 5 slides that talks about publication ethics in publication, where I talk about the plagiarism and what have you. I now realize that 1 hour I will run over the 1 hour to be able to present, and there won't be time for this kind of interaction we are having. So yes, I got rejected because of plagiarism. And in recent times, almost all journals have subscription to plagiarism detector. Immediately you send your paper, before it even from the editor, he will be able to see whether your paper is highly plagiarized and what have you. This is actually not a good thing for the research community. And personally, I have 2 experiences where my paper has been plagiarized and got published. The second one got published and without acknowledgement to me. One of it is actually the first one of I have one paper that I published on the we call cost benefit analysis of LPG, as compared to cooking stuff. And I saw the replication of my work in a different country studies, the same way I make my argument in my result and what have you. I have to write. I wrote actually to the journal to say that this is what it is. Unfortunately, they didn't follow it up, and I didn't have anything to gain, and I let it go. And there is also another one that is so plagiarism is a very big issue, and I don't think it should be tolerated. And for me, I think that if anybody have the case of plagiarism 1 or 2 times, completely the research community should ban them from publishing. That is, I mean, this is maybe sound harsh, but I feel that it is somebody's hard work, and then you are just stealing it. And then it should go beyond. It should go beyond rejection. There should be a blacklist where we know that these are the people that have more than one case of plagiarism. But plagiarism have different stages. There are some that it's the software pick it, but when you review it, because it's not really plagiarism, but because of the algorithm of the plagiarism detector, it picks it as plagiarism. I don't want to spend so much time so that we can allow time for other questions. Alice, is there any other question?
Yes, we got two more questions. So firstly, someone has asked, if a paper takes over a year to be published, how do you make sure your hot topic doesn't become outdated before it is released?
Okay.
And secondly, someone has asked for some guidance on the use of generative AI in manuscript preparation and reviews.
Okay. All right. So to the first one is that actually you shouldn't be afraid of the process. That is why in the beginning you need to determine, that's why I said that remember the time it takes. Every journal has information around the time it takes to get the paper published in that journal. Depending on your agency, depending on what you really want to achieve, you can decide whether you have a shorter journal that have a shorter period or longer period. But just so that the higher the impact factor, the longer it takes to publish paper, because a lot of people will be sending their publications or their paper to that journal. And in my experience, actually the topic doesn't come out of relevance, because remember, if anybody that is writing that same topic, if it's writing in your if it's writing the same thing, it's also going to do the same process that you are going through. So it's more or less, even out. So we might be thinking about the same topic again, and then I start writing a paper. You start writing a paper. Maybe I submit the paper maybe 6 months ahead of you, and what have you. It is most likely that my paper may get published. And then, even if the topic is hot or that is something that is published, in similar way, you can refocus your work to look at it in a different way. Except you guys are sitting down to replicate something, I think all the two work will find relevance in the research community, and they will somehow find a way to get published. So I am never. I used to be afraid of that, but over time I become unafraid of somebody thinking my idea and what have you, because everybody is thinking. I mean, we're all researchers, and people are talking, thinking how they can advance knowledge, and we are all going towards a common goal. So I am not too afraid, but I know that that is why I said that the earlier you start thinking about the idea, the earlier you start work, when you start thinking about idea, the better. And that is why immediately I have a conversation with somebody and I saw that, oh, I can write a paper in this area. I quickly jump into that and then do it in my weekends, my holidays, free time, then I do it. Then the question around generative AI, every journal will tell you that honestly, you shouldn't use generative AI for that. I have never used generative AI for my work. What I have used is, I don't know whether it can be classified as generative AI, is Grammarly. So I use Grammarly because English is not my first language, to look at my grammar structure and what have you, and then to make my sentences very, very well. But since generative AI become very popular in research and what have you, I have not carried out a very rigorous research and targeting other journals. And I'm actually afraid that if I do it with generative AI, it is somewhere out there, it's not original, and then somehow the journal plagiarism software will pick it up. But what I think we could use for generative AI actually is to make it simplified. Maybe you can, use it after you make sure that you have that idea that comes from your head. The analysis is you that talk about it. The argument is you. The presentation structure, everything is you. You've done it. I think this is me thinking that you can employ the support of generative AI to kind of help you make it a more succinct, like something to make it more flow, or say help you remove things that are not relevant, or help you to structure your language, or some kind of those kind of help, but not the content and the argument of the paper, but helping you in terms of how sentences are constructed or the flow of it. I think is somewhere that we can find a place for generative AI. I hope that answers the question. I am a bit conscious about time, that's why I'm rushing a bit.
Okay. No worries. No, that does answer the question, and I would also agree. I published my first paper last year, and I also used Grammarly um, because it's very useful, just to make sure things are streamlined. And then I included a sort of disclaimer in the final section to say I used it, and that is fine. So people, yeah, if you do Grammarly is a good suggestion actually. Um, there is another question, but Salisu, do you have any more slides to present or anything else you'd like to discuss?
But that is actually the end of my slide, in
Perfect.
terms of
Okay.
what I have. Yeah.
Well, we can do one more question and then we can end, I guess. So the final
Okay.
question for you is, how do I talk about policy implications without guessing or going too far beyond what my actual data shows?
Okay. That's a very brilliant question, and I like it so much. It's kind of impressive. So I can give you an example. So the question is that you need to know the policy in the area that you are speaking, and you need to know exactly what you are trying to do. I'll tell you one of the research that I have done. So in Nigeria, the government has produced what we call the National Energy Strategy Framework, which is like a policy of the government. And in that policy document, the government says that we want to achieve universal electrification by 2035, and we want to achieve that universal electrification by using what I think, if I'm very sure, around 90% renewable energy. And actually, that was me. That was my question. For example, how can Nigeria achieve this? So I went on to use onset, and I did the modeling, different scenarios and different pathways. And I understand that actually, from where Nigeria stands today, they cannot achieve that particular policy target in the period that they specified, and they can't achieve it using the renewable energy percentage they set through. And that was, for me, one of the policy implications that I've done, is to draw the attention of the Nigerian government, and especially the policymakers, to say that this is not achievable. However, this is what is achievable. So in doing policy implication, you need to read what is the policy. For example, I don't know if somebody can give me example to say that, okay, we want to achieve, 100% electrification in the next 10 years. You can do this model. It's a government policy. You can do this model and you see whether really this exists. And this is something that is achievable using data based on the existing data. Another thing you can do from that question is to see that, okay, government want to achieve it. Does they have other policy that is supporting it? For example, you now go and read the policy of government around maybe solar penetration, and you see that there is no support or in terms of tax rebate, in terms of tariff, in terms of subsidy, in terms of any sort of things the government is providing to encourage the use of solar and in policy. And here in another part, the government is saying that they want to achieve that without policy. So it's policy inconsistency. So you can use that to draw the attention to that. This is not consistent with the policy of encouraging the penetration of solar, system, because this policy does not do A, B, C. So you just need to read all the policy and then see it. I see Alice is trying to make me round up. I'm going to round up in a minute. So you need to read policy and then see how it applies your own work. So some of this is why it is research. You may read many policies, some of which you cannot even make reference to it in a work, because after you read it, you realize that it's not relevant. And that's the beauty of it, because you don't know what it is, you don't know what you can do and not what you can do. So in a nutshell is that I read the policy, and many instances, anything I'm doing, I look at the policy of the government. I look at, either maybe some target of international community like the United Nations. I look at some target like the climate and what have you, and see whether the result I'm seeing is in line with those things, or what can be tweaked to actually be able to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salisu. You answered all the questions really well, and thanks everyone for putting forward your questions. It's always nice when people engage, and I think considering the feedback in the chat so far, I think everyone's really enjoyed this session. So yeah, thank you so much, Salisu, for being part of it and being part of the alumni. You should be very proud of the work that you've done so far. And I'm sure that you'll continue to do good work. And yeah, honestly, guys, the people listening or watching online, if you do have any more questions, I'm sure Salisu wouldn't mind if you reached out to him. And hopefully, some of the tips you've learned here can go forward and help you to publish your own paper. And do be aware for the people that are in the session now. This will be uploaded on YouTube, so you can refer back to it as anytime after that. It will be there as a long-standing record for you to look at. If you want to know more, then reach out to us if you have any questions. But this will all be posted online, so I'll share the presentations. Will be shared after this. You'll be able to access the YouTube video, and hopefully we'll have more of these sessions soon. So yeah, thank you so much, Salisu. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing some people again in a future webinar.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for organizing this. This is really impactful, and I hope to see that we continue to keep this momentum. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, guys. See you later.